The mystery category with Premier Security 247. The School of Mystery by Jessica Clark. Lucy is a girl with a big ambition for exploring. She loves travelling the world and meeting new people. Her eyes were the colour of emeralds and her hair the colour of brownies. She lives in a well-decorated flat with her parents. They couldn't afford a proper house at the time, but soon they were to have their own proper house. Lucy imagined her new house and grinned at the sight of it. As they were moving house, Lucy had to move towns as well. Her heart was full of laughter and enjoyment, but deep, deep down was sorrow. Deep down were thoughts, bad thoughts. Will she ever see her friends again? Will her friends cope without her? Will this stop? Just stop, Lucy said to herself. I'm moving towns for good reasons, not bad ones. A tiny tear rolled down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away with her shirt, as her parents would overreact and think the move is bad. Lucy decided to forget all about these thoughts that were flooding in. She stayed as stiff as a rock and held her tears back. She didn't let them out whatsoever. Lucy, come on. That was her mum. She wanted to head to the new house. But it's early. No buts, replied her mum. Aren't you excited? Yes, Lucy hesitated. Lucy ran off and grabbed her bag from the floor. But something didn't seem quite right. Ah, yes, she thought to herself, my favourite teddy. She grabbed her woolly sheep teddy and said her last goodbyes to her room. There was a picture on her dusty shelf. The picture was of Lucy and her friends. She stroked each and every one of their faces as if it was real. She could almost feel their soft faces and their golden hair on her fingertips. She left the picture on the side. Lucy thought they would be crying, but she doubted it. I would just make her more sad. Lucy, for the last time, come on, her mother shouted. Lucy had to cover her ears because of how loud she was. Come in, Lucy cried. She could hear her baby brother wailing. Maybe he misses his friends as well, Lucy thought in her head. Her eyes brightened and she ran downstairs. The taxi had already pulled up. It was white and blue all over. Lucy could feel a little tingle of excitement in her arms. She started twitching and a big smile grew on her smooth face. Lucy hopped in the vehicle as big as a van and buckled her seatbelt. It was raining, so Lucy watched the wiggling window wipers on the glistening window of the taxi. As soon as she got bored, very bored, the shiny-looking taxi came to a stop. They were there. They were at their new house. Lucy's eyes peered out the window and looked at the house. It didn't look the best, but Lucy and her parents would definitely clean her up and make her shine. It looked like the house was screaming for a new life, for a family. But Lucy shook her head. It's only my imagination, Lucy cried. A few hours later, Lucy and her parents got settled in. The young girl spent nearly all day getting comfortable in her new room. It still wasn't decorated, but a bed and a lamp were just enough for the night. Lucy's mum woke her bright and breezy the next morning to see what colour she wanted her room. Pale white, please, Lucy said with excitement. Are you sure? White is a bit plain, her mum questioned. Yes, I'm sure, Lucy said, with a bit of anger creeping up her face at her mum's response. OK, Lucy, please come into the living room when you're ready. Me and your father have something very important to tell you, said Lucy's mother, a tone of rush in her face. Lucy sprinted downstairs like a lightning bolt as soon as she heard the word important. Whenever her parents told her important news, it would genuinely be quite exciting. When Lucy got downstairs, her dad gave her a refreshing clear glass of water to drink while this news would take place. She sat down on one sofa while her mother and father got snuggled on the other one, which was L-shaped and grey. OK, Lucy, this might be a lot to take in, said her father, a shiver of concern climbing up his face. I'll be OK. You know I'm not emotional, Lucy chuckled. OK, darling, this was me and your father's decision. You're moving schools, they both said in unison. Yay, Lucy said enthusiastically. Her parents took that as, OK, yes, and it was getting very late. They sent her up to bed. Lucy couldn't get to sleep. Her heart was beating like a hellish drum. She was staring at the ceiling. Lucy felt like something wasn't right. Maybe it was just the feeling when you move house. She was thinking too much, and she finally drifted off to sleep. Before she knew it, it was morning, and the sun glared in her eyes like an evil beast. It was her first day of school. She really wasn't excited, but she didn't want to be late. So Lucy whipped her clothes on and ran down to see her mum. Her dad was still in bed. She decided to let him rest, as he'd had a tough night, probably to help the family. "Lucy, toast or cereals?" her mum questioned. Cereals, please," replied Lucy, actually starting to feel rather excited. She ate everything in her cereal bowl, including the milk, and got her new school backpack. It had a lot of keyrings attached to the zip, and it was the colour of a gleaming sapphire. The zip was slightly broke, but she didn't mind. Lucy wasn't walking on her own for the first day, but her mum was taking her in her little used car. When they both got in, it grunted like a ferocious dog. When Lucy and her mum arrived, no one was outside. That's weird. Maybe I'm early. There was one kid which Lucy was going to say hello to, but they threw a rather large tennis ball at the top window. It smashed to smithereens, of course, but then they ran off through the entrance. Lucy ran through the entrance too and kissed her mum goodbye. She didn't want to be late or be blamed for the smashed glass, so she quickly sprinted inside, giving her mum a big welcoming yet unsteady smile. The school was gargantuan, and all of the children were sat on large benches with tall, straight backs. The school looked like a church, and the teachers looked ferocious. Lucy quickly merged in with the other children so she wouldn't be late and get caught with an almighty punishment. The school was rated the best and only school in the town. Lucy had pretty high expectations of it, but little did she know there is something quite peculiar round the corner. Something Lucy really didn't expect. Something out of the ordinary. The school was in the middle of an assembly which the headmaster was leading. The headmaster looked like a guy you wouldn't want to cross. His eyes were blood red and his arms looked like they could snap iron bars. His power was so high he must have been capable of everything. "You must be Lucy," he sneered like a pack of wolves. His voice boomed down the hallway. Yes, my name's Lucy," her voice shivered. "Well, of course it's you," laughed the head teacher. His name was Mr. Cackles. The whole school laughed in unison. They stopped and started at the same time. They sounded like robots. They sounded like something that wasn't real. Maybe they weren't real. Who knows? A few moments after the assembly, Lucy and her new classmates went into class. Lucy was expecting maths, English, all the typical lessons. But no, the first class was potion brewing. How strange. Lucy just rolled with it. It would be cool living Harry Potter's life. "All right, class," the teacher called. "Grab your brewing pots and a dead rat," exclaimed the teacher. "A dead rat? How revolting," Lucy cried, maybe a bit too loud. The teacher heard her, and words of pure evil reeked from his mouth. "Detention! No one questions my teaching methods," the teacher snarled. He was a malicious, demon-like man. Lucy looked at him like a piece of muck. "Ugh, OK, detention on the first day," Lucy thought. "This can't be right." Anyway, she strolled down the hallway looking very annoyed. I can't even explain her face. Let's just say she looked too annoyed to describe. Walking down the hall, feeling defeated, when she entered the detention room, the room fell silent. There was no one, just Lucy. Lucy felt a shiver of anger roll down her spine. She got bored. Bored. On the wall lay a poster stuck with blue tack. She ripped it off and started to read it. Her eyes widened at the sight of what it said. "This school is ending all children. The teachers aren't children. Beware," Lucy read. She was astonished. She ran out of detention and stood on her teacher's foot. It cracked and a wire hung out of their neck. She was amazed. Lucy got a bottle of water and drenched the teachers with it. They collapsed on the floor with no sound coming from the floor. She ran back to her house and told her mum everything. Sweat dripped down her face. Legend has it, any child who went to that school never came out alive. The end.